Alert the others. I'll be coming in from behind. Tell them to get the camouflage ready. We need to finish this in the next couple of minutes. Everyone to your predetermined stations. Podcast to commence in 3, 2, 1.
What's going on, Hellspawn? Welcome to another episode of Spawnography. I'm your host, Pierce Lydon, here with
George Marston.
How's it going, George?
Oh, boy, it's been quite a day for me, Pierce. You know, I live in a very residential area right now with a lot of very close neighbors. It's like a yuppie suburb neighborhood, and it's very nice, but it means that there's always a lot of remodeling going on. And right now, my neighbors right next door, so right outside my bedroom window, are having some remodeling done. And now my landlord is having remodeling done in our basement. So I have the double whammy of construction zones on both sides, like underneath and right next to essentially my office because I work from home. So it's a rough one. I did go work at my mom's house all day, and that's nice. I love my mom so much. So that was nice. But
shout out to George's mom.
Yeah, shout out to my mom. But I only have to be here for 2 days of this week because
2 days.
That's
2
right.
days. That's weird.
Because happening after that is that I'll be traveling to New York City, New York, Queens, New York, USA.
To visit the alley?
That's exactly right. Taking up residence in Rat City, baby, which gets its name in the issues we're talking about this week.
It does. It does. Yeah, I'm very excited for you to be here with the crew.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun.
Cool. So we got 2 issues today. We're getting into Spawn 40 and 41. I was saying to you a little bit before we started recording that for me, I mean, I've read ahead, but so it's not totally my first time reading it. But when I was doing my read through during the pandemic, I kind of got stalled out near all the Spawn Witchblade stuff because it's not great. Never been a huge Garth Ennis fan,
Right?
And
me neither.
I don't understand Witchblade basically. Even though every time I see the Witchblade concept like written out, I'm like, that sounds good. And then I try to read a Witchblade comic and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening here. So I stalled out around Medieval Spawn Witchblade, part 87 or whatever it is. It feels like there's like 12 issues of that. So I didn't totally make it this far. And I hate myself for that because this shit slams.
This little two-parter kind of, that we're doing here rips. It goes so hard. I love Curse's Return here. We're going to get into that. We got some Cy-Gor the problematic cybernetic ape.
He's kind of not that problematic, though.
I mean,
he saves a kid.
He does. Also, trigger warning, there is a little bit of animal violence in this two-part.
That is true.
Not just against Cy-Gor, but around that. So just want to give everybody a heads up, and I'll try to ping it before we get into it, because some people are real sensitive. But yeah, the stuff with Curse, I love so much. I remember some of the scenes from this, just from bits and pieces, and seeing some of the pages probably after the fact. The Greg Capullo issue of this two-parter with Tony Daniel in the first one, I think it slams. I think Tony Daniel does better than his first outing, but
definitely.
We'll get into that. As we get into Spawn number 40.
Yeah. And here, let me read the credits and then we can just kind of get going. I love it. You can tell we're excited about a couple of issues when we get to the credits as quickly as possible so that we can actually start talking about the book. Usually instead of like rambling on for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Fugitives, Part 1. Story by Todd McFarlane. Pencils by Tony Daniel. Inks by Kevin Conrad. Letters by Tom Orzechowski. Color by Todd Broker. Computer color assists by Roy Young. And it is dedicated to Morley Kolomayak,
Okay.
which would be Todd's father-in-law.
Oh,
We will find out at the end in the back matter that he had recently been diagnosed with brain cancer.
oh,
Because you'll notice that Todd here, this is the era when Spawn is coming out like every 2 weeks in its like march towards issue 50.
right.
Todd's only inking one of those issues, which is where Kevin Conrad comes in to ink all the Tony Daniels stuff. So
We also have a new colorist here, it seems. I can't remember if that's a name that's been associated with Illy Optics or anyone before, but
no, it isn't. And yeah, it's different. We've seen Brian Haberlin before, and I believe we'll see Brian Haberlin in issue 41. But yeah, Steve Oliff and Ollie Optics, the Ollie Optics crew with a month off, or at least an issue off here. But cool. We do get a summary of the previous issue's events. So we get a Spawn 38 summary, which again does read like this was probably the outline for the script. Because if this was your first issue, you'd have no idea what anybody's like. If we hadn't read issue 38, we would have no idea really what the hell is being talked about here. Anyway, it says Chris wanders through Dr. Frederick Wilhelm's mansion looking for files on the uncompleted Cy-Gor project. While viewing Dr. Wilhelm's last recorded message, Chris learns that Frederick's devotion was not solely to the Simeon project as he becomes obsessed with bringing his wife back to life. After surviving a stroke, Dr. Wilhelm finds himself physically unable to care for Cy-Gor. Chris attempts to leave the mansion, but Cy-Gor finds him first. Meanwhile, Spawn prepares the weapons he stole from the army base for a one-man war with Wynn. Cagliostro warns Spawn that killing Wynn will not solve his problems, as Wynn represents only a small piece of the puzzle. Spawn once again visits Granny Blake.
Yeah, that's really
that is everything that it's really everything that happens in the
boy. And
in
again,
issue.
that takes us almost 2 hours every time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Incredible. So
Todd McFarlane, master storyteller. Us, just a couple of
yuck-em-ups.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I do notice the difference in coloring right as we get into this. Not in a bad way necessarily. I just notice the computer effects, like the way the clouds are rendered, and we'll see, mist and people's breath and some smoke throughout that has that kind of that computer smoke effect that's almost stands out a little bit from the rest of the line art in a way that is just kind of being incorporated into comics a lot more at this time.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad or distracting. I think it's just a fact of the time.
Yeah.
So,
like I said, it's not bad. It is noticeable, though, especially, again, with the clouds across the moon and the way these bats are rendered. The whole art team, you can tell there's a different feel. But right off the bat, I also like the tone. It's very gothic right up front, very horror with that kind of like cityscape that looks almost like a castle, parapets and stuff.
Yeah. Here's where I love. So Todd opens up with these bats over New York City. Here's where I love him doing his like Rod Serling impression. By way of Canada, and also not reading but watching a lot of Twilight Zone.
Right.
In the cracks and crevices of the Lower West Side's alleys, there is a dark place hidden from sympathy. A part of the Bowery more hopeless than even this sad district's reputation. A place beneath the dignity of most of the homeless. It's called Rat City.
I do like that. A place hidden from sympathy.
Yeah,
that's a very poetic line, and I mean, it's very apt in a way. It sums up a lot of what that's about. I like that basically what we get in on here is Spawn hanging out in his alley, kind of tying one off, like he's working off a hangover, it seems, from Sweetberry wine. He says, "My head's pounding. That wine they drink. I can't believe how cheap it is." Well, you made it, dog. You conjured
he could have
it.
made something better.
It was conjured on demand for Cagliostro. I assume they're still going to the crates he made. He says, "How do Bobby and Boots it every night?" How do Bobby and Bootsy do it every night? How does George Marston talk even once a day?
So yeah, we see some night people crowded around his chair, and they're not really night people that we're familiar with or that Spawn seems to be familiar with because he yells at them. I love the guy who just wet himself.
Yeah.
That guy's face is
Thinking
hilarious.
I just wet myself.
But, this isn't the kind... We get into sort of the kind of art that I know Tony Daniel for. Again, he being an artist that I probably encountered more in the 2010s, especially on Batman. It makes sense that DC would just be like, those guys that draw Spawn, they can draw Batman.
Yeah.
But there are points where he's definitely doing his Todd impression.
Yes.
And the night people here, the caricatures, essentially.
Yeah.
He's really leaning into them.
With the guy's
Just
hand
kind of fun.
all forward and everything. Even, you're right, it does feel very Todd. It also feels like on these issues, Tony Daniel's really finding not just Spawn and the character of Spawn, but kind of his own feet as an artist. Like if you look at that first page, the way the buildings are rendered is very rudimentary in a way. Like it's not drawn badly, and it's certainly stylized, but like there's not a variety of the type of buildings. It's more just stacks of rectangles. But I do like these caricatures, like you said, and I can't decide if I like the Spawn face on the right or not here.
Oh, I think I like it. I think I like when he sort of has a semblance of a nose more, but because he kind of ends up looking like a thumb or something when he doesn't have a nose at all.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell like where his mouth is supposed to be, and you can see it, but because there's so many horizontal lines drawn across his face, it's hard to kind of make out some of the shoelace, the loops of the shoelace versus where his lip is a little bit. You almost want to read his mouth as a little higher and his lip as his chin. It's interesting, but I don't know if I love it. I like his first rendering of Spawn on the opposite page there, where he's saying, "Can I help you guys?" And he's got that nice face set in the shadows with the drooly, slobber.
Very classic.
Yeah, I like that panel quite a bit.
I think also he's getting a handle on his own style, where when we look at Wanda here and Terry and Jason Wynn, they're shown here as, the night people are futzing with his throne, and they apologize for messing with his throne or whatever.
Yeah, they say they're just trying to fix it up and make it a little nicer. And he's like, "Well, don't freaking touch my stuff."
Yeah, and he says he likes being alone. Meanwhile, he's thinking about everything that's going on. Cagliostro told him that Wynn is a small part in a much larger game, and he doesn't understand now also why Terry was working for Wynn. This is like the kind of thing, and he's upset about that. He's still upset about Wanda, of course.
He says, "Why was Terry trying?" Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's a little less pronounced than him yelling Wanda in alleyways,
Right.
But he's now just like, it wasn't enough that you are fucking my wife. You also have to like work for my greatest enemy.
It's a little less my wife, and now it's a little more my wife.
Yeah, exactly.
He says that Terry tried to kill him when he attacked the CIA headquarters in New York City, USA. And that's not actually true. Terry tried not to kill him. He actually he told Jason Wynn that Spawn might be more valuable alive and refused to give the kill order. But I get why Spawn's kind of mixing all that up and getting angry. And
yeah, I mean, this is the classic, like, two characters don't talk to each other, so they think that they're in,
they're on opposite
conflict.
sides. Yeah.
But if they had a conversation, they would sort it all out.
Right.
But it's comic books, so you can't have a conversation. It's just like how the X-Men don't know how to use a phone,
Right. Well, cell phones don't work around mutant powers.
Well, that's almost true. I mean, in the Outback era, they couldn't be recorded by technology.
Right.
But that did not extend to phones, because phones didn't have cameras on them.
No, wasn't that because of Saturnine? Didn't she cast
That's because of Roma.
Roma, right. I knew it was one of them cast a spell on them.
Brought them back to life.
Right.
Because
and also cast that spell on them.
Yeah, and then makes that spell so that they can keep doing their thing. Anyway, not an
Anyway.
X-Men podcast. There are plenty of those if you want to listen to those.
No. This is a Spawn podcast. So, yeah, he's kind of confused and upset about what's going on with both Jason Wynn and Terry. He's wondering if he should be as focused on Jason Wynn. He's getting more focused on Terry. And as he's having this thought, the supposed night people are running away giggling.
And his costume is like tensing up, we were told.
He notices that the costume tenses up as if it's anticipating something just as this trap springs on him. And these weird biomechanical looking chains kind of come up out of the throne and engulf Spawn. And they are strong enough to hold him in place long enough to administer a 50,000 volt shock, which knocks out his costume and disables his necroplasm. Excuse me.
And then we get the evil Jawas.
Yes.
Coming over. Were they in disguise as night people before? Was like that just them?
No, he explains
really?
it later. The curse explains it in a minute. Yeah, he does. Well, first, before we get to that real quick, I want to say I like these 2 pages of Spawn getting trapped. The bottom 3 panels of that one page where like it's his hands reaching out and it's kind of the trap spread across the 3 panels. And then the splash page of Spawn here. The noseless Spawn face here works really well for me as opposed to the other page. His big howling gaping
I like
mouth.
Spawn with a little bit of hair.
It is cool that it's just like little strands of hair kind of
Charlie Brown
up.
hair.
It's a little texture that Tony Daniel adds that I really like. Tony Daniel puts a lot of texture on Spawn's skin, a lot of blemishes and bumps, and it looks good. It's a little more defined in some places. In a way,
it's kind of precursor to what for like the next stage, maggot face Spawn, which will come.
Right.
I mean, we're still quite a few issues away from that, but the sort of next evolution.
That will happen.
I mean, it's great. I mean, but that's the direction takes it once we kind of lose Shoelace Face a little bit, and it's kind of a precursor to that. So I like it as a weird bit of like visual continuity to see the evolution of that.
Yeah, I like that too. And I like Tony Daniel putting his own spin on it.
I'm really coming around on Tony Daniel's art as well. The more I'm getting acclimated to it, I'm like having a good time with it, which is really, really fun.
This issue works a lot better to me, I think. It feels a little less rushed. It still feels a little more, it still does feel a little like Tony Daniel was working on a deadline. But what I think happened here is that Todd was going to do this, started getting those Tony Daniel pages in, and was like, screw it, I'm just going bi-weekly. I'm getting them in fast enough. Yeah, the curse, his explanation for the night people that set the trap is he said he had to hire engineers who were willing to dress up as homeless people.
I totally forgot about that.
To set the trap. It's just a kind of line he throws in there when he's explaining his plan.
I like these little Jawa guys though. They're driving Cliff. They're forklift they're forklift certified at least. So
yeah, they'd have to be. Otherwise, this would be a huge
insane.
OSHA violation.
I like that they are also just eyes with mouths.
Yeah, similar to Spawn in a way. Their eyes are very creepy and their mouths are very full of teeth, and they have these weird cybernetic limbs. We'll find out later exactly what these guys are, but they're henchmen of someone. We know that to be the curse. That will be revealed in a moment. They plow their forklift through Spawn's torso and yelling "Wahoo!" as the forklift tons go through, spraying goo all over the place.
Spawn gets good and bloody in this one.
And right through that hole in his chest again.
Does has he healed it yet?
I don't know, because he has the same hole in the same place in this issue later, but it could be from.
And we haven't seen the power meter in a minute.
Yeah.
So.
No, we haven't. But we do learn a little bit about the costume here. We learn that it feeds on the necroplasm of Spawn's body and responds to it.
We did kind of know that from Cagliostro, like the first or second time we saw him, where I guess it's the first time we meet him, where Cagliostro does say, like, you don't need to use your power. You can feed
Right.
the parasite is feeding off of you. The suit is feeding off of you. You can feed off of it in the same way. I don't think from the lessons of Houdini or whatever, I don't think Spawn's really figured that out totally yet. But
No. And here we're getting kind of the added bit onto that it's
right.
connected to the necroplasm directly, kind of as its own energy source in a way. But that also begs the question, what the hell is Spawn's energy source? It's something that the curse, particularly later in the story, is going to be concerned with himself, which is Spawn's power source. Because his minions here are boxing Spawn up in a crate, which is like dragging his little feet and his cape along behind them, and packing him into a van and driving him to parts unknown. So next we cut to a check-in between Terry and Wanda. Terry at work saying he's sorry he couldn't be there to help with the Band-Aids. Are you sure Cyan's okay? A little tidbit added in of, their family life again. There's always something going on there, which is nice because I like that Todd McFarlane is never letting them forget they have a kid or act like they're not also parents of a child by just talking about Spawn.
Yeah, it gives a little bit of humanity to them.
So, right, and it keeps them with some consistent characterization as people. Also consistent, Terry's preoccupation with important files, because that's what he says he's at the office late to do, is check on some
We love
files.
a file.
So, yeah, he has to cross-check some files, he says. So then they're talking about Spawn. They're confused themselves, just like Spawn is confused about them. Wanda saying, first he saves you, then he tells me you're a traitor. He scares me. I know we've got protection now, referring to his CIA guards who have been kind of keeping watch on him. We saw that in the, a while back. The big crossover issue. Anyway.
Oh, The Hunt.
The Hunt. Yes, thank you. I always just want to call it The Files in my mind.
The Files Hunt is really what it is,
files,
kind of.
Yeah. So someday, that's what we should do. We should do a giveaway of files. Send someone a bunch of files. Probably with some information about their boss that could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To place this very firmly in 1995, Wanda is reading Waiting to Exhale.
Oh, yes. Oh, also, Terry is talking on this cell phone like drug dealer. It's not a cell phone. It is a fucking. He's talking on this cordless phone like drug dealers talk on cell phones in public. Like, you've ever seen a guy who sells weed? He definitely talks into the bottom of his phone like that. But this just looks like Tony Daniel was just like, oh, it's close to his head.
I forgot where it feels like he drew his head after he drew his hand and the phone.
Yeah.
And then he was like,
no time to erase. Gotta ink.
It's fine. Gotta get this in. But yeah, Waiting to Exhale. Do you know what Waiting to Exhale is?
Of course.
I'm assuming that Wanda would have just seen the movie.
Yeah, it was a feel-good breakout hit of
1995. Based on the novel of the same name from 1992. Do you know who directed it? Forest Whitaker is his directorial debut.
Oh, okay. Forest Whitaker.
That's kind of cool.
How about that?
Starring Whitney Houston.
Novel by
Angela
Terry
Bassett.
McMillan, a cover,
Anyway.
judging by the cover of what Cyan's reading. I do like this drawing of Cyan. Wow, of Wanda reading. My brain is scrambled today. I told you, my friend, the construction crew showed up unannounced at 9 a.m.
Oh, perfect. The perfect time that you want construction noises.
My brain, man. I'm a little, if I seem jumbly in this episode at any point, first off, I'm going to trust Pierce, our faithful editor, to make me not sound totally wackadoo, but also just please bear with me. Anyway, Wanda, I like this drawing of Wanda reading in bed. She's got the pillows piled up behind her. She's got the phone.
Does she read in bed naked?
I do.
I don't know. Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. That seems.
I mean, maybe she's not naked. We just also can't see what she's wearing, although she is naked. So, so on the other hand, she is very nude. I mean, I don't know. That's what I would have been doing probably. I don't think
guess.
I'm weird. Some people are.
She does make a great point though, where she's like, if Spawn can penetrate your offices, why would it be a problem for him to come get me at the house? Like,
Yeah, and then she's like, he knocked on the door. I don't get that. She's very confused. It's all, she says, I'm not willing to lose another husband. Plus that costume freak pretending he was Al. It just makes me sick. And I like that it's adding some more insight into Wanda's actual thought process here in the light of her contemplation rather than just in the moment where she's freaking out.
yeah, and for a book that again doesn't have many female characters that like speak, it's nice for her to get a little bit of interiority when usually she gets to kind of just be a damsel. So
an agency of thought, even like she's allowed to have her own thoughts, Bechdel test and everything aside, tongue in cheek but true. She is always a woman talking to her husband about her ex-husband in a lot of ways.
pretty much.
But at the very least, she's allowed to have an active role in that story on some level.
Yeah.
More than can be said for a lot of widows and dead wives in 90s superhero comics.
In 90s fiction in general, I'd say.
True.
Yeah. So we're going to move on and we're going to meet little Tony Bilato, who is skipping school to go fishing. And he fishes without any bait on his fishing rod, like on his line. And he's finally caught something. He's got a bite, which is very rare because I guess he sucks at fishing.
Well, he says he never uses bait. So I don't know. Little Tony Bilato sounds like he sounds like a singer of like a song called like 59 Scooter or something like that from, 1959 about a scooter.
Fun fact, Anthony Bilato, real person, works for McFarlane Toys.
Recorded music in the 50s about scooters. Yeah.
No, so every time that there's a name in these books, I always search them endlessly to see who they were and I'll
who
search
they were in life.
Yeah, because I'm like, it's probably a real person. And if it's not a hockey player, which the other weird thing is that at this time there would have been a 12-year-old in Canada who was playing like junior hockey named Anthony Bilato as well. So, but spelled slightly differently.
Todd keeping his eye on future pros.
My first thought is that it was like a kid that he knew that like played hockey. So that's why, and it would have worked out like age wise because that kid would have been like 12. This kid's probably like 8 or 9. Tony Daniel can draw children.
Yes, actually,
first person.
This kid's face looks just mostly normal. His eyes are a little like,
That's fine.
But
I'm fine with
compared to the like demented Looney Tunes we often get, most of the children in these comics so far have looked like the Toy Man on Superman the Animated Series, like this.
They look
doll
like
face.
They look like boardwalk caricatures.
Yeah, Cupid dolls
of adults, like of a kid version of an adult.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to have like a kid that actually kind of looks like a kid is kind of nice.
Then we get the sheriff down here is yelling at him to get off the ice because they saw Bigfoot.
Oh, he's great. I love him.
Yeah,
I love his veiny, weird neck.
When I first read this, when I read this page, I thought, that's funny. He's telling him that Bigfoot's out to get him as a way to make him go home, like like just busting his chops. And then, nope, they're actually hunting Bigfoot on the next page.
Yep, with I have to imagine 2 heavily photo-referenced dogs.
And a very heavily photo-referenced gun for sure. They're hunting Bigfoot with like, I don't know, an AR-75. I know it doesn't work that way, but it's like a massive gun. Yeah,
they find some bones. There's these hunters. They look like hunters. They're wearing flannel and those hunting caps. And, they find some bones and they're hunting. They see it's a fresh kill. A lot of, I've noticed also Tony Daniel loves a long face with a mustache. He loves
Yeah.
to draw. He loves to draw guys that just kind of look like Sam Elliott.
That's true. That's true. It is a little weird that we have the guy holding the giant massive gun there just in one hand, and then like kind of his duplicate silhouetted in the background. Like,
It's fine.
yeah, he was just like, God, it's the same. They're just standing there holding their guns just like that, exactly the same. But yeah, they say they've never seen a killing like this before, and they realize the dogs are gone.
Yeah, the barking of the dogs has changed from a bark to more of a yelp. For folks who don't like animal violence, maybe skip ahead like 2 minutes. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Not even. We're going to skip through it. Basically, Cy-Gor shows up, and he has killed the dogs.
Yeah, that's really it.
Yep. Cy-Gor's cool, though.
This drawing made me sad. Cy-Gor is cool, but I don't like what he's doing.
I agree.
You know, it's fine. It's just a story. But it always makes me a little bummed. So they don't like it either, and they open fire on Cy-Gor here. And he skimpers off into the woods, saying it's gone in a heartbeat, sucked into the forest camouflage, which, okay, sure.
Doesn't seem like a very dense forest in the first place.
Not the way it's rendered. That's what I was going to say. So, you know, it's fine.
Meanwhile, Tony Bellotto is still trying to go fishing.
Yeah, he's like, fuck it. The sheriff warned me off, but I had to get to that fishing hole. He went back, still wasn't getting a bite. But along the way, here comes the sheriff's truck screaming back towards the fishing hole. Just as it's about to hit Tony Bellotto, Cy-Gor scoops up the kid and saves him from the truck and sets him up in a tree. We can't tell if the sheriff made it out. It looks like he probably did.
He did.
Yeah. But here they also explain a little bit about Cy-Gor and its name. Biomechanical neurological transferal system, which has nothing to do with Cy-Gor. They just decided that sounded cool.
Yeah. Does this issue work better or worse having the pre kind of like 38 where we meet Cy-Gor kind of? What do you think?
You know, I feel like that was a weird kind of sidetrack anyway. I think that it maybe explains where Cy-Gor comes from a little bit, but the whole brain transferal thing still doesn't make a lot of sense. And it makes less sense as this story goes on. I gotta say, as much as I love Cy-Gor, the cybernetic gorilla, as like a thing, I don't love the Cy-Gor portions of the story just yet.
Yeah, I think he's a really cool character design, but he, again, when he is so far away from Spawn right now, and Spawn already has literally a guy that's this big.
Yeah.
That is a cyborg that he fights all the time.
It's another interesting parallel to Spawn, where it's, you know, his origin, Cy-Gor's origin is essentially that. Similar. Yeah, to Spawn, he was a gorilla that was experimented on because they wanted a weapon that would be obedient. They picked a candidate that they thought could withstand the melding of flesh and steel, flesh and weapons, as it actually says, the melding of flesh and weapons. And it is trying to break out on its own and do what it thinks is right based on its weird, strangely achieved human gorilla combo mind. And, you know, I see the parallel to Al Simmons and Spawn in the sense that Al Simmons is, you know, a weapon who was chosen for hell, mission, bonded, blah, blah, blah. It's fine, and I like the character, and I kind of like, you know, that many of Spawn's villains are in some ways kind of strange reflections of him. But yeah, it's also just like the Bigfoot thing is fine, I guess, but the origin is weird. The sidetrack so far, it feels like it would make sense if Spawn was already involved in this part of the story and it was its own two-parter.
Right. And also, like, just put fucking Cy-Gor in New York.
Yeah.
It's the concrete jungle anyway. It's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the thing that I do like, the reason I'm asking that is because as we move into the next scene, we're seeing, sort of the necroplasm and blood and the melding of flesh and weapons. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like, right?
Mhm.
We get that kind of call out in the previous page. We move into the next page and we see something similar to, experimentation and whatnot. And I almost wonder if we had run sort of the origin of Cy-Gor, like
I see what you're
parallel,
asking.
like literally the origin of Cy-Gor parallel to what we're going to find out is
Like if that chunk of the story had been in aligned with this part of the Spawn story.
right.
Yeah.
So then maybe that brings the parallel a little bit more to the forefront, right? Where now Curse is not doing what he's doing. So Curse is vivisecting Spawn.
Yeah, this shit gets so gnarly. We got these cyborg Jawas standing over him, looking like creepy wizard druids with their like ragged hoods all around him. And
They look like Vivi from Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, they sure do.
Which would not be out for a few years. Final Fantasy VII is not even out yet at this point. So, but I guess, I guess Vivi does look like what those little black mages look like in Final Fantasy. So
Yeah,
that is kind of their vibe. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so we find out it's the Curse, and he is taking all of Spawn's organs. He's cutting them up. We can see jars all around Curse's laboratory. One has the cape in it. He's basically castigating Spawn for leaving him chained up in his alley, nailed to the wall and like tied up by his cybernetics to die. And he's saying that he figured out what gave him his powers. It's all that goo inside him. And if Curse can get the goo that's in Spawn outside of Spawn and into Curse, Curse will get the powers
too.
And if you get the goo out of someone and into you, maybe you will get powers.
Well,
yeah.
Phrasing.
Maybe you'll at least get some gratitude.
Well,
not the way Curse is doing it.
I had nothing for that one.
No, nobody does.
So, and he mentions, he says, "Oh, your friend Sansker, he wanted me dead too." Sansker being the vampire from Blood Feud. So
yes, who also Tony just left Curse hanging on the wall, as I recall. It was like, it was like torturing him. This rules. I'm just gonna leave this.
So, I love Curse.
Yeah, he's
so
awesome.
much. He's so cool. He I guess he kind of looks like Bastion.
Kind of, but he's got green and black armor.
Yeah.
And I like his cool eyeless mask. It's a good look. It's a cool, unique design. And we see a lot more of it on the final page of this issue as he tells Spawn he's about to tear out his living brain. And we see Spawn strapped to this experimentation table. He's got that, big, huge gaping hole in his chest still.
Oh, yeah, he does.
And we see his legs being carted off into the air, and his bottom half is just missing. There's little bits of his intestines spilling out on the table, all the necroplasmic goo everywhere. And Curse is just reveling in this horror with his cool, surgical tool arm. What a cool, weird villain. I think what I like about Curse partially is something that is a mixed bag. It's a 50-50 shot that it's going to work. There are a lot of 90s characters that have stuff that designs that don't directly tie into their concept. Like this guy could just look like a weird priest or something because he wants God's salvation and he believes that God didn't give it to him, but if he can steal Spawn's power, then he'll at least have power over hell. It's this whole weird metaphysical spiritual thing, but he just kind of looks like a generic 90s villain in green and black.
He's just Strife.
Yeah, he kind of
is just green and black Strife
in a way, but it rules because it just looks badass. Because I'm going to tell you this, man, no matter what my faith, no matter what my beliefs, my religion, my driving force, if I have the opportunity to turn myself into a living nightmarish cyborg weapon, I'm going to wear green shiny metal armor and like a black suit, and I'm going to have a big gnarly arm. I'm not just going to look like some lame beta cuck priest.
Also, Curse has lost even more of his humanity since the last time that we've seen him.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. He's now got 2 robotic, like cybernetic arms.
Yes. The one that Spawn originally tore off has been replaced with a more like almost humanoid one, and then the other one is now full of creepy surgical
It's like a classic dissecting tool.
Yeah. Like a buzzsaw,
a pizza cutter.
like scalpels. Yeah. That's what I want to cut my pizza, a Curse arm.
See, again, I think that there are parallels between Cy-Gor and Curse, right? They're both these sort of like cybernetic things.
The difference is
there's
that
something
Curse
there.
willingly subjects himself to all this stuff.
Right.
And none of the other people, well, that's not true. Some of the other people, Overkill, willingly subjects himself to these transformations, but like Tremor is transformed beyond his will, Cy-Gor. There is this whole thing where all these people, these weapons, are puppets of someone. And they're all kind of parallels of Spawn in that way.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes why you want it to stand out a little more.
Well, we've consistently drawn parallels to Spawn's kind of 2 big influences, right? Which are Spider-Man and Batman.
Right.
And in those books, Batman's villains are reflections of him because they are also, in most cases, the result of some sort of trauma.
Right.
Right? For Spider-Man, his villains, like him, are sort of like science experiments gone wrong on some level. Science accidents gone wrong, right? So like...
Also, all Spider-Man's villains are weird old men, and he's just a little boy.
In animal costumes.
He's just a little boy.
Proto-furries.
Yeah.
But so I think the thing that I keep wanting from Spawn is a thesis statement on villains. Like, I want the villains to have a bit of a theme going on. I don't really mind that they're all cyborgs.
No, I like that too. I
just want it to be more...
I want each one of them to have a little more personality and like place of their own. When you see Spawn fight, Overkill versus when you see him fight Tremor, it kind of feels the same, even though
that's true.
You just want them to have a little more individuality beyond the window dressing that like one's a gorilla, one's a mutant, one's a Sicilian mafioso.
Right. And especially because Spawn doesn't have any cyborg parts. So it's not like the deal is like he's the good cyborg and they are the bad cyborgs.
Right.
He's just a different thing entirely. They happen to be cyborgs. And that's what I mean. I wish there was like a little bit stronger of a thesis. It's why I do like Violator. And I was saying before off mic that the book does feel like it is starting to cook. And it's because Violator's back, I think. Like, I think that was a bit of a turning point, was like, okay, Violator's back. He's doing stuff. And he's the closest thing to Spawn in terms of...
Like what Spawn is.
Right. Like, in terms of literally what they are. They are in the employ of Malbolgia. Right? So, and also, I think that Todd is just leaning more into like, I can do sort of Monster of the Weeky type villains. I think he thinks that Cy-Gor is way more interesting than Cy-Gor is.
I mean, I like parts of it. I like the idea that it's the ape and it's a cyborg and I like the Bigfoot thing. At the same time, the problem I have with it is that it feels like a very generic story that doesn't involve Spawn yet. And it's only going to get weirder and be the thing that feels like a sore thumb against the kind of gnarly, pretty kick-ass action with Curse. Yeah. I said it up front. The Curse stuff is like a fucking chainsaw. It's like Reanimator shit, like in a superhero comic. Precursor to that classic scene in Immortal Hulk, early in Immortal Hulk, where he's captured at Shadow Base and they like cut him apart and there's all the Hulk parts all over the room.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, so many parallels here to that I want to go ahead and say that I would love to believe Al Ewing read a little bit of Spawn and was paying some tribute. Al Ewing, nice guy, great writer. Had sushi with him once.
Well, that's going to bring us to Spawn number 41. This is Fugitives Part 2. Story by Todd McFarlane, pencils by Greg Capullo, inks by Todd McFarlane, copy editor and letters Tom Orzechowski, color by Brian Haberlin, J.D. Smith, Dan Kemp. Special thanks to Danny Meeke, dedicated to Michael Golden. And we get the summary of Spawn number 40, but I'm not going to go through it because we just did.
So is this one of the first examples of Danny Meeke inking Capullo? Because Meeke became Capullo's inking partner for a long time through a lot of Batman.
And I think there's a few places in here where I didn't realize that special thanks was there. And then I'm reading and I was like, man, that looks like Meeke inking. I certainly didn't.
And I need to reread some of that because there must be parts of it. Oh, I'm betting that Vietnam flashback maybe. Maybe the Cy-Gor splash page.
Oh,
could just be the coloring.
I was actually thinking the clown.
We'll flip through it and I'll see it and I'll probably be like, oh, yeah. But maybe it's the coloring on that Vietnam flashback, which we will get to in a moment. That, those clown pages, definitely. I can see that. I think the coloring in those Vietnam pages makes the inking look a little more brittle.
So I get on Todd. We've gotten on Todd a lot for these big first page sort of splashes.
It's been a while since we had one of these text blocks, though.
Yeah, but I like this one because this is a fair bit of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is speaking to, and this is, spoiler alert for folks who are reading along with Spawn for the first time with this podcast, but Armageddon is going to be everything he's kind of talking about here, the ultimate good versus ultimate evil. Armageddon is a big arc in Spawn.
It's a big climactic thing. Like, it's a huge moment.
The problem is that the book has to keep going after that. So it's a climactic moment, but that the book is kind of building towards. And there is a plan, I guess, until there's no plan. And Todd's not writing the book. And we'll talk about, Jim Downing one day. But
we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's where we start getting the hints that not only is this battle foreshadowed, as it has been through other issues by Cagliostro and by Malbolgia itself and many other characters, now we're getting these hints that some say it's already here. Some say it's already happening.
Right. And this is the first time we've had Cagliostro talking about it. We've had Malbolgia hinting towards it in the first arc, right? But this is where it feels like we have a little bit of propulsiveness towards it. And that's what I meant about Violator being back and being in the background of stuff. And we'll check in with Violator here. But it feels like we're getting somewhere. And I've already we've had a bunch of listeners who have joked like, you guys say often that you're frustrated that the book's not going anywhere. That is kind of the experience of reading Spawn, is like it takes a really long time to do anything. And
yeah,
we're aware.
We're just getting used to it. Where I'm at the point right now where my knees are in the hot tub.
So, we get that explanation of Armageddon. Al is yelling because he's being vivisected. And then
interesting parallel between this noseless screaming Spawn face and Tony Daniel's noseless screaming Spawn face in Profile earlier.
True. This one is a little more close up, so I guess we get a little bit more detail. I do like Spawn having a little bit of hair.
His weird tongue all stuck to the roof of his mouth.
Oh, yeah, that's weird, too. That also feels like a coloring error, though.
Maybe so. Yeah, that feels like that was maybe supposed to be like saliva or something.
Yeah.
The next, though, is one of those classic vertical double page spreads.
I would put this poster up in my house now.
Hell yeah. I would put my band's logo at the top of this. This rules. It's Spawn strapped to the vivisection chamber table with
all the little Jawas swinging around
above him like gremlins or like little Muppets. That's such a like Disneyland kind of like background of a ride sort of thing, with Curse perched on top of Spawn, sucking the necroplasm out of his body with his claw. And it looks so dope.
And there's like a little evil Jawa behind him with a bucket catching some of it, and then the ones up in the chain rafters are like smashing each other in the face with it.
This rules so hard. This is like such a metal fucking like, it's so dope. And Curse's face looks demented, like his jaw under the mask with this weird hippie like goatee.
If there was like a theme park ride for Spawn that you get to, so like you get to make a theme park ride for Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
It could be at any theme park.
Okay.
But the only thing is, they're like, listen, we're trying to save some money, so you have to superimpose Spawn onto a ride that already exists. You don't get to build like a new ride. What ride?
Okay.
What ride do you do?
It's a Spawn world after all.
It has to be that one, right?
Right? Yeah. It has to be.
And then it's just a ton of like scenes of Spawn, and this has to be one of them.
When I was a kid, okay, I live in Georgia, and we have the Six Flags Over Georgia theme park. In the 90s, they started adding Batman stuff to it in Gotham City, and they changed this roller coaster, the Mindbender, to be all Riddler themed, and added a bunch of little decorations like the little mind things from Batman Forever. Yeah, exactly. That roller coaster, my friends and I used to stand up when they would lock the things so that you'd be slightly loose in the seat and you could just like hang on in the loops. We were demented as teenagers. It's so lucky that I'm even here right now. Anyway, it's a Spawn world after all.
I like that. That would be good. Honestly, Tower of Terror.
Yeah.
Spawn themed Tower of Terror also would be
awesome.
I mean, I think that's the easy one. But
start in the alley at the top. It looks like you're in the alley, and then the bottom is hell.
Pretty cool. That would be sick.
Yeah.
And it would be Todd doing the intro.
Yeah. Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn.
I'm Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn.
So this whole sequence here with fucking Curse scooping out the necroplasm and just hauling it into buckets that his like weird creatures are like taking away.
Also, this little gremlin has like 4 fucking arms.
So they're all cyborgs. That's the thing, is that they're all like, some of them had human faces before, not these ones. These ones are just like full on little creatures. And Curse says that some of the greatest minds on Earth are standing by to study the necroplasm to figure out how to make it his body instead of Spawn's, which I love, because I like that we're getting reminded that Curse does all this to himself because he's rich and like totally fucking
he's
evil.
Crazy.
Yeah, he's off the wall. And I love this panel, this close-up panel of Curse's face on the left side here, where he's saying pain is a great stimulus. And it's just like, it almost looks like one of the Fleabiac brothers.
Yeah.
Because he's got that big dome helmet instead of an eye.
It almost looks like he's just a skeleton at this point. Like there's nothing human about him, which is what I love.
Yeah, he's like Joan Rivers, replaced almost everything. Wah, 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 wah. That's a joke from 1995. The same
which
year
is when this came out.
Yep. So this whole sequence is great. I love the coloring with the like oozy schmoozy necroplasm everywhere. Again, very Reanimator. One of my favorite movies.
Great movie. Also, we've said before that green is a great color for Spawn, and like in general, it provides, it like always pops for him because it's in such stark contrast to his costume usually, And
somehow it also works here to differentiate his body from the brown of the Jawas a little better than I think it might otherwise.
100%. But I was just going to say, it really, I don't know, these pages look great. They look really cool.
Yeah, they do. The next 2 pages are weird.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
love also this, like with the Jawas on his body and Curse like hunched, kind of like Batman.
Yeah.
Next to the tube that is holding his costume.
The K7 Letha.
Oh man, it's so cool. And then
It
I love that
looks
they just
awesome in there.
I love they just throw his leg away.
Yeah.
I have a question about this panel at the end though.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
What do you mean?
What is that? Like, so it says like there's one.
Oh, that's Spawn going unconscious.
Oh, that's his eye closing?
Yeah, that's like his POV of like the light going out in his eyes.
It's not super clear.
You know what tipped me off more than anything is the little like thought bubbles like tail going off on the right side there. You see that on the very bottom?
All right.
But he says, the drugs will hold you until I can finish your dissection, and then he falls unconscious. And I also love that when Curse is walking away, he's got the gremlins all over him. God, this book rules.
Yeah, it's really good.
This is when Spawn is so awesome.
Yeah.
When it's like just a straight up horror movie superhero comic.
It needs to just be like a B horror movie all the time.
Yes.
Like, I want Spawn to fight Psycho Gorman.
I haven't seen that. I need to watch it.
You really
I'll
do.
watch it.
Oh my goodness.
I just missed
Our
it.
good friend Lan Pitts writes the Psycho Gorman comics.
I know.
And you haven't watched the movie? Who do you think you are?
I'm fucking nobody, dog. I'm nothing.
So this the drugs are going to take effect, and we're going to get a flashback.
Yeah, because as we see here, I like that we're getting a little bit of insight into Al Simmons' past before Wanda even. But this is a little weird. It is a flashback to a time when Al Simmons saw similar brutality being done to someone else when he was a young soldier in Vietnam. He was only 21 years old at the time, it says. It bothered you that someone so young could tune out the horrors, even when they happened to you. And we get the impression that Al Simmons has seen and done a lot in this war already that's been pretty tough, and that's maybe what steeled him to be an assassin later.
This is not a great it's not great.
It's a very, very racist, frankly, stereotypical, lurid depiction of Viet Cong soldiers.
Yeah.
The drawing of them isn't particularly racist. I mean, it's not great.
The one at the bottom under the POW.
Oh, you're right.
Pretty bad.
You're right.
Pretty bad.
Where you can just see
like the teeth.
You are very right. And now to be fair to Greg Capullo, that's how he draws every person in Spawn, aside from like Wanda and Terry Fitzgerald. They're all cartoonish caricatures. That one doesn't come off great in context at all.
Right. And this is where that style does.
It butts up against some aspects of taste that we're a little more keenly aware of in 2024.
Agreed. We're not trying to say by any stretch of the imagination that, and I think this has basically been proven through Todd's own words, that anybody involved in this comic was trying to be purposefully racist. However, things can age poorly, and this is one of the things that did.
Yeah, so to sum it up real quick, Al Simmons and one of his buddies are on patrol. They're captured by Viet Cong soldiers who try to get information out of them by torturing them. They cut Al's partner into pieces in front of him while he's alive. And just as Al is about to be cut up himself, he's saved by a soldier whose name is, quote, Cy-Gor. Now, this is a common trope through the 80s and 90s. I can't think off the top of my head if there is a movie that fits this bill directly in 1995, but this would have been coming off of Dead Presidents just a few years earlier, which is a very popular movie. Platoon, of course, Apocalypse Now. I think this is Todd McFarlane leaning into a not uncommon trope about Vietnamese people and the Vietnam War.
Right.
And also, again, maybe paying homage to media he likes, which I like some of those movies too, even though, again, some of those depictions veer very strongly into racism.
Like racist stereotypes, yeah.
Racist stereotypes of the Viet Cong as barbaric soldiers willing to do bloodthirsty, brutal acts. That is often paired with a similar view of American soldiers in some Vietnam and Vietnam era, war era media, because God knows American soldiers were out there doing absolutely awful atrocities
What are you
to
talking
Vietnamese
about?
people.
America's never done anything wrong.
Have you ever seen the documentary The Winter Soldier? No, I'm not talking about Captain America the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier is a documentary. I think it was filmed in the late 70s or early 80s. It was basically a documentary where American GIs, soldiers who fought in Vietnam, came forward and testified about the atrocities and war crimes that they committed, both unilaterally and at the behest of superior officers. So it's a pretty chilling documentary that lays bare a lot of things that American soldiers did that's as bad or worse than what's being described here by Vietnamese stereotypes. I only bring that up to say the horrors of war are horrible. And when you put them on a stereotype like this, a stereotyped portrayal like this that is combined with, again, a depiction that is not necessarily given with a historical eye, it just leads to a feeling of racial stereotyping and othering and the same kind of propagandized depiction of the Vietnamese that was being fed to American soldiers in Vietnam to help them learn to eliminate Vietnamese people.
Yeah.
Soldiers
also,
and non-combatants alike.
Todd wouldn't have learned about this in school, though, because he's Canadian. So it's not really his
Canada's
fault.
never been part of any wars.
Right. They're conscientious objectors.
Yeah.
They're Canadian objectors.
Yes.
But
Canadian objectors.
the other thing I have a question about, though, is how old is Al Simmons?
Good question, because if he was 21 and
if he's 21 at the maybe it's the very end of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War ends in 1975.
Right.
If he's
that's
21
possible.
In 1975.
So that would be 1954.
So he's born in 1954. He's voted People's Sexiest Man Alive in his mid-30s.
Yeah.
Wanda is in her 40s.
At this point?
With a 2-year-old?
I mean...
I guess she could be younger than him.
Yeah, could be younger than him. Also,
I guess that does...
Not that unheard of.
You know what? I guess this all does kind of check out. I was kind of thinking that it would be odd almost that he is... Well...
I don't think it's that outlandish.
I guess I was thinking about the whole Botswana thing with Chapel, but then he could just be sent on missions. It doesn't really matter where he's sent because he's a world famous government assassin.
I mean, Todd himself is born in 1961, so he wouldn't be that much younger than Al Simmons if that was the case, if he's there at the end of the Vietnam War.
True.
So it's not unfeasible. So after this little flashback, we get a check-in with Clown and Jason Wynn, and I do see what you're saying about the Danny Meekiness of these pages.
This is the most Danny Meeky inked page that's ever Danny Meekied.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, especially when you look at the way the faces are rendered, even especially versus the one that I was thinking might be the previous 2 pages, which again I think is a product of the coloring because the styles are just so different. Danny Miki does that a very different style of hatching that I think
Yep.
does kind of a disservice to some of Greg Capullo's work.
I do like this clown.
I do. I like the clown. He looks like Jeff Ross.
I like his weird nails. Ugh.
I know, and I like him just lounging nude, eating nachos or whatever, smoking a cigar. Again, something I'd probably be doing. I think I love his like weird long pink bathrobe.
Which we have to assume is Jason Wynn's.
Yeah, we do. Or maybe he keeps it for whichever ladies might be paying him a visit. But no, Jason Wynn seems like a guy who likes to get cozy in something soft and like really resplendent.
Jason Wynn feels like he would be a member of the Hellfire Club if the opportunity arose.
I could see some strong parallels with maybe Sebastian Shaw,
right?
Like the douchebag side of Sebastian Shaw. Yeah,
it's partly because they have the same facial hair, I guess.
He does have that like kind of wing-swept like
Yeah.
hairdo too, that gives him like a sort of devilish Clarion, the witch boy kind of look.
Oh,
anyway,
they should bring back Clarion.
Yeah, they should. Jason Wynn, he is getting out of the hospital. Clown is in his apartment. He's like, "How the hell did you get in here?" Clown's like, "Don't be surprised by anything I do, dude."
I like that he calls him Gimp.
Ugh, I know. Yeah, it's this whole thing is very Quentin Tarantino to me. The dialogue of their exchange.
Oh yeah.
Is very like, I'm gonna say nasty things because that's what I think people talk like when they're bad people and mature. And then it's probably right. Clown pretty much just tells him to keep putting pressure on Wanda and Terry and Grandma Blake and all the people in Spawn's life, and also that they haven't that Jason Wynn hasn't lived up to his part of the bargain, the deal.
Which, to this point, I mean, he kind of has.
Yeah, I don't even know what their deal really is other than Jason Wynn hassle Spawn. I guess it's that he brought too much attention to the whole thing or something. I don't really know. That's the problem with this stuff with Clown, is that as much as I find the interplay between Jason Wynn and Clown interesting, and Clown is giving Jason Wynn motive. Clown is giving Jason Wynn motives. I don't know what Clown's motive is.
Well, we know that Clown just kind of hates Spawn.
And he's there to test him. He's kind of re-embracing his job in a way. It's just some of what he wants from Jason Wynn isn't clear as a result.
So. Yeah. We're going to check in on Cy-Gor again, who is never traveling during daylight and eating occasionally. Yeah, that would be bad. But the creature does know right from wrong. And
yeah,
there's
I guess.
Small trigger warning here.
Yeah,
mostly for how we're gonna speak about this scene, I suppose.
I guess. I don't know. To lay it out, what happens here is that Cy-Gor, who knows right from wrong, sees a couple fooling around in a car. Now it's made clear through the dialogue
and the narration.
And
which says, with the windows rolled up, the young couple's activities can send conflicting messages.
So they're very consensually fooling around in this car, although it's uncomfortable. But the ape thinks it's rape.
Right.
He is like, oh, I see a woman being assaulted, and because I'm a good guy, Cy-Gor, I'm going to destroy the car and rip this guy apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And the guy had a knife in his boot, so that's something. That's a weird little detail.
I mean, I would be defending myself against the monstrous cyborg gorilla somehow too, especially if he was just like grinding me into paste or whatever he does to this guy. They explain a little more, kind of reiterating, but adding a little depth to like what Cy-Gor's whole deal is, which is that he was supposed to be a cyborg ape body with a human mind. Like they wanted to create a perfect body soldier. Like they couldn't find a human who could withstand the physical transformation they wanted to do. I think they didn't look hard enough because there were at least a couple out there, judging by Tremor and Overkill, Apparently their search
Apparently
didn't extend to
Curse
Sicily.
also.
Yeah, Curse. A lot of folks can withstand the cybernetics.
There's another missed opportunity, it feels like, here with Cy-Gor, right? The story, the humanity is not Frederick Wilhelm and his like kind of bootleg Mr. Freeze thing.
Right.
The story is you make him the parallel of Tremor, where Tremor didn't want to be experimented on, and a guy signs up. He thinks he's going to be Captain fucking America.
Right.
Right? And he thinks he's going to be Captain America, and he becomes fucking Cy-Gor.
And halfway through the brain exchange of trying to put a human mind in the ape's body, when it gets to the 50-50 mark, whatever that means, with a 50% upload, the upload stalls out and something happens and he just goes off the rails.
Yeah.
And Cy-Gor is born. And the funny thing is that Dr. I always want to call him Frederick Wertheim, which is not it.
It's definitely
Frederick.
what his name is kind of
sounds
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Frederick
Anyway,
Wilhelm.
Frederick Wilhelm wants to put his wife's dying mind in the Cy-Gor body so that she can survive.
Which then I have a lot of questions for that guy.
I'm going to go ahead and say I think that he really just wants the companionship. He's old, so it may not even be. I think he just wants her to live on. Also, though, maybe he's got a little bit of that ape in him, dog.
Listen,
maybe
I saw the
he's
Planet
got
of the
a
Apes
little-
movies. It doesn't work out for humans, so.
No, it doesn't. I think they should have just gone all the way and had her just be like a lady in this body.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting. And then she'd be like freaking out on a rampage because she doesn't understand that she's a gorilla now.
Or just like loses her fucking mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the real tragedy, is that if it worked and then if the process was successful, but it was also went bad, like it wasn't good for her, you know? I don't think I'd like being put in an ape body.
Me neither. Although
of all the body transfers I do,
body maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a good question. How big are the tits? That's all I need to know. So
we see more of the hunters from earlier, I guess. They got to go. They're still tracking Cy-Gor.
Yeah, they run out of their hunting lodge,
and they're hoping that it
it
avoids town. But like we just saw it attack kind of a bar or whatever, so.
Yeah, it kind of made its way towards town, saw the car where the people were fooling around, thought something untoward was happening, and since it is a justice ape, it had to intervene. It Frank Castled the poor motherfucker. These guys came out of their hunting lodge, and it has now run off into the wilderness again.
And then we get my favorite scene in this entire book, which is Spawn realizes that he can still manipulate the parts of his body that are dismembered from him.
So he cuts off his own fucking hand.
Cuts off his own hand to try and have his hand punch the
case that has his costume
the case that has the costume in it. And also this is so fucking funny that he's like yelling at, in his mind, he's yelling at the hand for like going the wrong way and stuff. And he keeps...
It's talking about how it takes 3 minutes for mind and limbs to get in sync. Spawn is not good at using his powers. He's kind of like Invincible. Where like for the first every issue of Invincible I've read, and every episode of the cartoon I've seen, he sucks at being a superhero. He just gets his shit kicked in. And then he finally figures out one stupid, dumb thing he can do with his powers and manages to get through by it. That's kind of how Spawn's doing, but this kicks ass. Again, I call back to Reanimator in this episode a lot.
Yeah.
This is very fucking like Herbert West Reanimator, the hand crawling around, punching tubes. Quick question that I think is addressed later, but I don't really understand the continuity of. If he can cut his hand off, why does he just pull out his arm from the thing? Curse later says, had you done that, alarms would have gone off. You would have been prevented. But why doesn't he try?
I think because he cuts it off on the other side of the shackle. So
he can't just pull it through? Maybe it's like going into his flesh or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
That'll be my no prize explanation, is that it's burrowing into his flesh.
Honestly, we don't even really see the knife cut it off.
No, we don't know
feels,
exactly how it happens.
It does feel like the script said Spawn cuts off his own hand, and Greg Capullo was like, "How?
How?" Yeah, he's laying there.
Like, I'm imagining Greg Capullo sitting at home with like a knife in his own hand, right? And he's like, "All right, if I had a knife in my own
That's the
hand,
only stage of it that's drawn is exactly that. Him pointing the knife at his own wrist.
but like, how do I do it? How do I do it? Like, I guess
Anyway.
here you could do it. This is
Kind
this
of.
is a visual medium, right? Like here,
Yeah.
I guess you could
This is
sort
great
of do it.
Yeah, I guess if you're Spawn, I don't know. He probably had like assassin training to do it or something. If you ever need to cut off your own hand.
do love the huge bottom panel of the hand.
Yeah, that is
It's
sick.
really good.
Great.
With the knife clanging in the
hand.
background.
For a hand-centric comic for a lot of these issues, I'm loving this hand
And then the
stuff.
hand running.
Greg Capullo does a great hand job.
Anyway, so the hand.
It's a compliment. 127 hours later, the hand is crawling around on the floor.
This is Spawn's 127 hours.
27 hours, yeah. Remake it starring Spawn.
Would watch.
Eliminate the problematic element of James Franco. Reshoot all of James Franco's movies starring Michael J. White.
Or Keith David.
That would be hilarious.
It's just Keith David and Pineapple Express.
It's Keith David's house and this is the end.
So Spawn's hand.
Shout out to Keith David. Parasocial one-sided friend of the pod.
Yeah, friend of the pod, Keith David. So the Spawn hand tries to break open the encasing containment unit for the K7 Letha. It doesn't work. And he
says the drugs made me weak. It might be that there aren't biceps there, though. It might be that you don't have triceps or tendons or nothing.
Curse comes back with his evil Jawas, and they are shipping like the individual pieces of Spawn to like different places. Like that's their plan.
Yeah, scientists.
I love that we've never seen the scientist that Curse is talking to, that he's just like, this is happening. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Great. I think sometimes this book does get too bogged down with trying to explain shit, and I don't need an explanation for Curse. I actually think it'd also be funny if like Curse is just sending them to people who don't know that they're getting them because he's so crazy.
Necrogram.
Yeah. And they open it up and they just get like a hand.
He's like the Ted Kaczynski of Spawn body parts, just like sending them around. Yeah, he's come back to take out Spawn's brain, the most treasured part, which he believes can unlock the key to wielding the necroplasm himself.
Yeah, residing somewhere in his subconscious is the reason for evil.
The reason for evil. Well, before we learn anything about that, and before the Curse has a chance to find out, we see the K7 Letha break out of its casing, because a hairline fracture was all it took for it to be able to break the glass. The Spawn's hand had done its job, which I like that. That's fine. Yep. It's the powerful suit. It's regained its strength.
Great.
All it needs is a one weakness. This drawing of it busting out of the glass.
Super cool.
Rules. It's great. I love the like weird light coming out of its mouth.
Yeah, it's good. And also, like, the purple blood of the little gremlins
is a nice contrast to the necroplasm.
This is another page that I think might be a Miki page.
I was just thinking that, because you know what it is?
Miki is so different than the rest of the book.
You know what it is? And this is a trick you'll notice in a lot of Danny Miki's like hashtags. No, not hashtags. His hatching. Is you can see it if you look on the far left side of the white part of Spawn's the costume's body. Mm-hmm. There's that little line. It's like a horizontal line with a bunch of vertical lines across it. Danny Miki tool number 1 in inking. You see that a lot.
Just add some scritchy scratchies.
Yeah, and I mean it's a simple way to add depth. I used to do that a lot when I was, I'm a drawer, an art drawer, I'm an artist, and I used to use that
You're something
tool
of
a
an
lot.
armoire yourself.
Yeah. So the costume breaks out and it rips through everything, including the curse. It shreds the curse in half.
Yeah.
And while it's doing that, it is writhing around,
collecting the pieces of
all
Spawn.
of the Spawn body parts. I love that you can see like Al Simmons' head being swept up in it here. Like the whole thing rules, and it's ripping Curse apart. We get this shot of Spawn all broken inside the costume as it's like trying to figure out how to put him back together right.
So good.
So cool. I love that Spawn is like Wolverine if Wolverine didn't heal but just kind of put himself
He's
back
like a
together.
crash test dummy.
Yeah.
Basically.
So cool.
Which
but Curse
Spawn should really use this to his advantage more, I feel like.
Sometimes he does. Like he had that hole in his chest for a long time.
I guess still does.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe. I guess so. And now he's all like hacked to bits. He's had to like, he's going to have to fuse himself back
but imagine
together.
if like you could just send your hand to the store.
I know. What's that show where they send the little kid? It'd be like that. I have ADHD, so my hand would be forgetting like what it's trying to get. There's this show. It's a Japanese
show where they send children on
yeah, like they send them a list. Wow. So Curse has one final revenge to wreak. He says, "Don't gloat, demon. It's not over." And Spawn says, "Oh yes, it is."
Oh wait, hold on. But right before that, this Spawn looks sick.
Oh yeah, where he's all like his parts are all like
he's finally gotten back together, kind of.
Yeah, it looks great.
I like
one big boot era coming on strong.
The costumes revisions were somewhat successful.
I love that. I just love how hellish it is to be a hell Spawn.
To get put back together a little bit wrong.
Okay, so I'm a pretty big sucker for body horror, if you couldn't tell from me being so into fucking Reanimator, but I just love that aspect being added to Spawn. That's why I love the shoelace face. I love that he's not like, he's invincible, but it's not good for him.
No, it sucks.
Yeah, it's bad. It's painful. It's hellish. It's not a reward. It's not a power. It's a curse.
Well, action is his reward.
That's right. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Since he became Hellspawn, before that, he was a world-famous government assassin. So, yeah, Curse has one final revenge, and he drags the top half of his steaming, weird, ripped-apart torso across the floor, grabs the head of one of his Jawas, which are, I guess, sort of like Doombots, because he pushes the button in its mouth, and a countdown begins to an explosion. He says, "The first rule of thumb, Hellspawn, never start a war unless you're willing to die for it."
Which, again, fun foreshadowing for Armageddon.
Where the fuck is Curse's like base built? It's like built on a desiccated like hillside tree trunk. It's like the hill where Jack Skellington
We are going to
cries.
find out. I did read ahead, so we are going to find out. Because the next issue starts with Spawn shooting like a comet across the sky from this explosion. Curse's base is in West Virginia.
Oh, well, of course. West Virginia is full of craggy,
Mountain Mama,
rotten apple core looking fucking. I think I've had a diversion for everything that's been said in this episode, but I'm going to say West Virginia is my favorite state that I do not want to ever live in. I love West Virginia. I don't care about West Virginia. I think it's so beautiful. I think the landscape there is just incredibly. It straddles the line of the gray, dismal terror of Ohio, which is a void of joy, and the like sort of brightness of New England. I love West Virginia, but I can't go there. They don't want me there.
No, they definitely don't.
I have been to the Mothman Museum there, and it rules.
Oh yeah, I forgot that they have Mothman.
Mothman got cheeks.
Yeah.
Go check it out. Anyway, you got this big explosion of his tower on this weird hill, and that's the end of issue 41 of Spawn.
What's funny is that it just says the aftermath next issue. However, this arc is 2 parts. The next issue is completely separate. Like I said, the very beginning of it does reference what happens here, but like
it's not called like Aftermath Part 1.
It's also not called Fugitives Part 3. I also don't really know why this is called Fugitives.
I guess because they're all away from New York.
I guess Cy-Gor's a fugitive.
Cy-Gor's on the run, and I guess Curse is maybe on the run,
Also,
or Spawn's about to be.
We don't really get any. So Cy-Gor's just out there.
It's just a subplot right now that's getting a lot of airtime, a lot of really weird airtime. I wish that I loved a cyborg monkey more. Why am I not super into the cyborg gorilla?
Again, I think it's because it wasn't presented in a way that was interesting. Like,
yeah, it's not like cool.
I think if there was a little bit more humanity to Cy-Gor, I think it's the thing that we really loved about Tremor, right? We liked Tremor because we were like, and I guess as we're recording this, the Tremor episode has just come out, and I edit everything so far in advance, and then I write up the little blurbs so far in advance that when they come out, I get to read them again, and they feel new to me because I forgot the past me wrote them. And my blurb for this episode is like, Spawn made a friend, kinda.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that's cool. I don't know. I like Tremor. He seems cool. So I want Cy-Gor to be not a friend necessarily. He doesn't have to be a friend, but
I want him to be cool.
I want him to be anything. I want to be more than he is. I believe in him.
I don't like that that overt kill is cooler right now. The cyborg ape should be cooler to me.
I agree. I don't have a Cy-Gor toy yet. I have an overt kill toy, so you know that really says everything you need to know. Back matter. We got a little bit of back matter. So first, in issue 40, we do get a big. Oh, check out this Cy-Gor.
Yeah, it rules.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Cy-Gor was basically a toy concept before I think
Cy-Gor only exists because Todd McFarlane wanted to make that toy, because he made it again in when they first started doing the DC toys, like around that time, and they were doing a big McFarlane Toys expansion. They did a whole line of cyborg animals, including a cyborg gorilla that was a non-Spawn. They had like a shark and a gorilla and a few others, but it was basically just a Cy-Gor.
Yeah. So there's no letters in 40. There's just a huge Todd letter to the readers and a lot of photos of stuff. So like photos of like Al Simmons and the Spawn Mobile and
someone owns that now.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So it's him basically saying like, hey, I've recently had a few comments made to me about some of the consistency within the book and why is it that some pages don't look the same as others. The biggest reason for any change in terms of what you look at visually is because of deadlines. Fortunately, all deadline problems are not due to the fact that the creative people are lazy. The harsh reality of life sometimes comes in and bites you when you least expect it. In my case, it's the fact that my father-in-law was recently diagnosed with brain cancer and had to undergo operation to remove the growth. As you can imagine, the fallout from this event somehow weaves its way down into the book's scheduling. I've had to make a couple of trips to see my father-in-law, as well as being supportive to the rest of my family, especially my wife. So yeah, he's basically being like, get off my ass. Spawn comes out as much as it can. And I'm
a human being.
I got real shit going on.
Yeah.
But he also kind of responds to the fact that people kind of keep saying at this point, like, what is this building towards? Like, stuff's not happening. And I think it's especially unfair because if you read like the first 40 issues of Spider-Man, they don't necessarily build towards something. They are adventures.
And there are subplots in them.
Sure.
Like there's the Green Goblin through a good chunk of it. But like, it's not... Readers by the 90s were primed to be looking for like...
your Secret Wars, your Infinity Gauntlet, your... not Watchmen,
or even
make any sense,
your yearly X-Men crossover.
Right.
whatever
Your
it may be. They're
Inferno,
looking for the big moment that pays everything off. Spawn pays stuff off a lot slower in little tidbits here and there. And there are big moments like the fight with Chapel, but sometimes those don't really hold up in comparison to the revelations that come a little slower to me.
Yeah, and I think because also there's a lot of world building that has to happen. The advantage of the Marvel universe or the DC universe is that you have multiple titles going on at the same time. So everybody gets to take on a little bit of the world building, right? Here's a little bit of Metropolis. Here's a little bit of Gotham. Here's a little bit of New York City. Here's a little bit of the Fantastic Four doing their thing in fucking the negative zone. Here's some space shit with Nova. Here's some X-Men junk in Australia. Whatever. You're able to build out a world because readers can understand, like, oh, this all happens in the same place. These characters can interact. Oh, a big thing is happening and all the characters are forced together. Great. In Spawn, it's like, well, we got one book. We got 22 pages a month. What do you want from us?
Yeah, and I mean, Spawn will expand before too long, probably because of some of
The
that.
miniseries already are happening, and he's trying.
Absolutely, of course.
He's trying to be like, look, here's like a blood feud. We get Sandsker, and we get that kind of like subplot going on. The Violator mini, we don't need to get Violator back in the main book specifically, and you can weirdly kind of ignore that and just be like, yeah, it's fine. He's back.
The thing is, in retrospect, though, we're reading it all now, and kind of we can binge read it. We can read those miniseries whenever they feel natural to come into the story. I wonder if at the time, though, if it felt even more like, okay, well, you're kind of taking these big moments like this Violator thing, and we've been waiting for this to pay off, and now it's going to pay off in a totally different book that kind of doesn't have much else to do with Spawn.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I can see that side of the frustration. Also, though, I mean, they didn't need to tell that whole Violator story in the pages of Spawn. That was a good expansion.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just the fact that it was the payoff to the Violator side of the coin.
Yeah. Well, and it gets Violator back on the board, right? So, you read it if you want to. If you don't want to, it's fine. You don't need to. It's the same as, like, again, like reading a Marvel comic and being like, oh, the last time that I saw fucking, I don't know, Green Goblin, he was dead. He shows up again, and there's a little editor's note that's like, I don't know, check out Green Goblin number 1 through 3. Oh, okay. Oh, he's back.
Sometimes, though, the downside of that, and this is a modern thing that happens a lot, is you get through that a big event story, and the only thing that comes of it is like, we got clowns back on the board. Oh, there's a new Darkhawk or whatever, and we just had a year of stories.
About the new Darkhawk.
There's no new Darkhawk.
There was.
I know. Pierce, you said you didn't want to talk about it. There's a whole year of stories and plot lines, and then it all just comes down to someone else did a thing or a guy died. And it starts to feel like there's never a payoff in an ongoing comic book series because there actually kind of isn't a lot of the time. And that's why some of the best runs are the most beloved, because they feel like they have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah, I mean, look, we just saw the end of Krakoa, right? The end of the first. Yeah. But I also I read it. I didn't love it. I thought it was the best it could be for what it is. But I liked
it better than I expected it to.
Same. And I also like the way it's been talked about. This is the end of the first Krakoan age. Because the reality is that the creators involved in that, all of the creators involved in it in any small way that they were part of it, created something that future writers have to reckon with. And will want to bring back, right? And
it's like Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah. Oh, God, we're never getting rid of that.
No. Well, I think there was a quote from, it might have been Dan Slott, where he was like, when I first started talking about this, people were really skeptical. But I think by the time it's done, people will be wondering in the next 10, 15 years, how are they going to bring that back? And it does feel like that. So, that's the cyclical nature of these things.
Yeah.
And that's the part of an ongoing story, is that I have to imagine Todd isn't necessarily thinking about how he's going to end some of these stories for Spawn yet. because he's not thinking about the end of Spawn.
Well, it's funny you say that, because in the same letter, he gives a little bit of a preview of what's to come. He says, "Let me shed some light on some of the ongoings I have planned for 1996. I will be introducing a new angel character named Tiffany, whose purpose is to stop the mixing of angels and hellspawns," which I guess is really only the one, but like she's
So
mad
she's
about it.
racist.
Also, Todd's sister's name is Tiffany, so that's fun.
Wow.
Tiffany McFarlane. She sees the relationship of Spawn and Angela as more like an interracial marriage and believes each race should stick to their own.
So literally what I said came true 3 seconds later.
Yep.
Boy, what a weird thing to name your sister after. Like, to name after your sister. Yeah, Tiff, guess what? I put you in my comic book. I named you after a racist angel who doesn't like the mixing of the bloods.
Yep. So there's that. Through all this, there will be a subplot of Wanda that will eventually be resolved in the double-sized issue number 50. This will bring us somewhat close to how Al relates to his wife and the strife that he has been trying to overcome. Also in that issue, because of his actions, he will return to hell and begin a journey that eventually leads him face to face with Malbolgia. This theme will probably run through issues 50 through 60. Upon his return to Earth, he will get back to his normal ways and the life he led before he died. This means getting more into the espionage and covert operations he once dealt with. Given he was a fairly good agent before his death, he should be an even more awesome force to deal with, given that he has the power of Spawn to go with his already highly trained skills. There will be the introduction of a new character who will know Al's identity, but will become a friend and ally, helping Spawn sort through all of the information that he will need to do his covert operations. So he's getting a microchip.
It's also, though, like...
This will probably take us
boy.
up until around issue 70, at which point I'll begin dealing with Spawn's relationship with the other bums and what the alleys and his presence among them actually means. He'll be trying to get answers to the questions that we all have about why there are even homeless people to start with and why they don't just lead a normal life. This should take us to around 80.
What?
Mixed in, he's fighting, Spawn is going to fight homelessness for 10 issues. And then mixed in amongst all these issues will be how he deals with the fact that Terry Fitzgerald and Jason Wynn are working on the side that on some levels caused his death. More importantly, trying to find out what the big conspiracy was that led to his death at the hands of Chapel over 5 years ago. I will probably stop the bi-weeklies after issue 50 and concentrate on doing a few mini-series that expand some of the characters already introduced in the previous 50 books.
I can't wait to see Spawn address why homeless people don't just lead normal lives like the rest of us.
Yeah, well, that'll take us through about issue 80. So
just hearing that laid out, gosh, gee willikers.
Here's the thing: the longer that part of that section goes on, it feels like first parts, the Wanda stuff. Yes, you plan that. Malbolgia stuff. Yes, you plan that. Fighting homelessness doesn't feel like you have a total handle on that.
Yeah. Not sure you're in the zone on that one yet. You know, the other thing about it all being decompressed and like spread out over so many issues and like the emotional arc of Spawn being so long is that you would have people in the letters being like, so Spawn's really just all that shit with Wanda's like settled. He's fine now. She's fine now. It only took 50 issues for that to happen. Jeez. Like there's gonna be letters like that where it's gonna be like, I would have thought it would take lifetimes or some stupid shit.
I mean, honestly, the Wanda stuff really never goes away. So it does take a lifetime. I mean, it's in the current books now and she's dead. So
my wife.
Yeah, my wife. And speaking of, like the letters columns, just the people writing in just will read Spawn and just not like large swaths of it for whatever reason. In 41, we get a bunch of letters about issue 37, which was the Freak Shoe. And some people like the Freak. Oh, also the Super Nintendo game has come out at this point. And the Spawn board game has come out. which
Oh, hell yeah.
we need to get, I think. So we
Yeah.
need to play that.
I think we need to play that with Todd McFarlane.
That would be amazing. So people are asking about the Freak. Is he coming back? Why didn't you write that issue? So he says, glad you like the character, the Freak. I originally created him years and years ago as a schizophrenic hero who flip-flops between dealing with reality and his imagination. Due to some scheduling constraints, I ended up getting Alan Moore to write the story based on a plot I'd given him. Unfortunately, as another letter writer had said, the story seemed to be a little disjointed with the flow of Spawn's continuity, due mainly to the fact that the story was scripted before some of the previous issues were completed. Basically, they're just saying, like, why is the stuff in the Freak story happening the way it's happening based on the other stuff that Spawn's been through? Like, you're doing these, like, mini-series and stuff, but I don't understand where they fit in. And then when we're reading through it, we're slotting these things in where they fit as opposed to release order. So I can understand the
Right.
frustration of some of these writers. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, nothing too crazy. Mostly people just saying that they like the book or don't like the book, and Todd responding in earnest. The back matter, the further back matter, I mean, there's this cool like trimmer. There's this cool like trimmer Spawn pinup here.
Oh yeah.
So
Cool drawing of
yeah.
Trimmer.
And then we get to see the toys in the back. So we get to see Clown, the Max with his like headgear. You know, when the Max has his like feathers and stuff and hair.
Yeah.
Exoskeleton
Yeah.
Spawn, Shadowhawk with like 30 guns. And a very funny thing about buying these issues on eBay is I bought a bunch of them on eBay from Alaska, from a seller in Alaska. And they came that in the back of each book, you can like fill out a little form to order your own Spawn merch. And I guess when this guy was a kid, he had started filling it out and just like never cut it out and sent it. So,
oh, I have a bunch of those. I used to do that in like punk magazines where you could like order albums. It'd be like $40 for a Dropkick Murphys CD, and then I would be like, "Yeah, check. I definitely want that." Never gonna order it though.
Yeah. But I think that's it. I mean, final thoughts on Fugitives.
Okay, final thoughts are Curse rules. Body horror Spawn is peak Spawn. Cy-Gor should rule, but gorilla walking around in the wilderness, busting up what it thinks are crimes is not peak Spawn. So mixed bag, but overall, I really, really loved the main story of these two.
I want so much Curse all the time. So cool. I love Curse. I like him because he like sort of sucks, but when he shows up, he's always doing something interesting, I guess. And I like his weird little gremlins. I don't know.
He should be a more recurring
he could show up.
You know?
Here's the thing. He could show up at the beginning of every issue doing something, and I would just be happy to see him, and then I could read the rest of the issue.
They should do a Crypt Keeper like horror stories with the Curse as the
That'd be incredible.
Tales of the Curse.
We will later get a book called Curse of the Spawn, and it has nothing to do with Curse. Not nothing, but like it's not directly related to Curse, unfortunately. But yeah, my final thoughts are love this arc. It's really fun. We talked about it for quite a while, and that's always a good sign. And we dove into it early, so I love that. Yeah. Really coming around on Tony Daniel. Love Greg Capullo. Fun to see a Capullo-Miki team up. And Spawn is spawning. Next two... the next episode, we're covering 2 issues again. They're kind of one-shots. They're not super related. They continue the story, but they are sort of the kid who collected Spawn. Well, the kid who collected comics and Spawn meets him. And then another issue after that called Evil, which surprisingly hasn't been used as a title yet. I want to call out one more thing. We did get a really, really kind Apple Podcast review.
It was a very nice review.
That's from Jedi092270 on June 2nd. That says, finally, a Spawn series. I'm 53 years old. I've been buying Spawn issues since the very beginning, including every spin-off and limited series. I'm so pleased to finally have a podcast dedicated to Spawn. The format of starting at issue 1 and the knowledge the hosts have in both Spawn and comics is a welcome treat. If you're a Spawn fan, this is the podcast for you. Well, thank you, Jedi092270, for listening and also for leaving a review. It's really, really important. On that note, if you'd like to leave your own review, you can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us at Spawnography Pod on Twitter or whatever, at Spawnography on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it. George, where can people find you if you want them to find you?
You can find me on social media on Blue Sky, and not really using Instagram, but I'm kind of on there. Anyway, anywhere I'm at is at Crypt Trash. You can also look up my band Hypersleep on Bandcamp or Spotify, and you can look at my music, my solo music on YouTube, which is at Witch Crisis. And you can read my writing every heckin' day at newsarama.com, whose views are not represented in this podcast.
Cool. And you can find me at plightning or at lapsed.punk on whatever social media you use. That's pretty much it. George, for Todd so loved the world.
He gave his only begotten Spawn.
Later, Hellspawn.
Spawn!